let's move to the topic of homosexuality and transgenderism in the church, and particularly Fiducia Supplicans, if I'm saying that correctly. Supplicans.
Yes.
Is this the weirdest document that's ever come out of the Vatican?
It's one of the worst.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There's no doubt.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to explain it for the people that don't know what it is?
Yeah. So Pope Francis issued a document, or approved the publication of a document by the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith, the Castery of the Doctrine of the Faith, it's now called, which allows for the blessing of same-sex couples.
Would that mean Fernandez was the author of it?
He signed the document.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, keep going.
Sure. So the document is very bad because it does a few things. It treats same-sex couples as analogous to mixed-sex couples. In other words, a man and a woman are called a couple, and then two men who are in some kind of relationship that is based on either actual or potential sexual activity with each other, that they're also called a couple. The church has never called two homosexuals a couple because it's impossible. They're not a couple. Couple in Catholic theology and usage refers to people who enter into a relationship patterned on God's plan of creation and revealed in Adam and Eve.
Yes. That
man and woman were made for each other to be mutual supports and then to come together to propagate the species. So the purpose of sex is propagation of the species through in a committed married relationship that's based on a lifelong promise of fidelity. That's what sex is about. Sex is not about two men committing sodomy with each other and calling themselves a couple. So they're called a couple in Fiducia Supplicans, which is wrong. They're not a couple. And the basis by which the basis by which they constitute themselves to call themselves a couple is that they either will or are having immoral sexual activity between themselves. And the church has never considered that form of, let's say, association between two people to be blessable. Never. In fact, Pope Francis also approved about a year and a half earlier than Fiducia Supplicans, another document from the Doctrine of the Faith, which said you can't bless sin, you can't bless these couples. So Fiducia Supplicans contradicted what Pope Francis had ordered published or permitted or authorized for publication earlier in his pontificate, which shows the chaotic nature of this whole thing, because by your second document, you've already condemned yourself because you were originally told people they can't do this. You can't change moral principles on the basis of the calendar and say, well, what I said yesterday about being immoral, I don't say that anymore because it's no longer immoral. Well, how did that happen? We're entering the world of make-believe, which is the pretend world that homosexuality being approved by the church, that's a whole world of pretending. We're pretending two men are a couple. We're pretending that their sexual activity is not mortally sinful. We're pretending that they're blessable in the same way that it happens frequently. Two people get engaged and they come to the church and say, we want to get married. Can you give us a blessing as we're getting ready to get married? Of course I can. You're entering the path of virtue and sacramental life. Two men who come to the church and say, we sodomize each other, they won't use that language. They say no. They'll use some euphemisms about it. But, we're...
the old language is so much better than the new language.
Well, because it expresses reality quite clearly,
Yeah.
Same-sex sexual activity is a mouthful. And it, strictly speaking, the only sex is only between a man and a woman. Every other usage is a misuse of sex. So it's not really sex per se. It's a misuse, Which
is sodomy.
Yeah, which is sodomy, which applies to the behavior of two people who are of the same sex involving sexual organs. So this is the world of make-believe. It's the world of tearing down both reality and the moral evaluation of reality. Very, very dangerous.
How do you bless a couple without blessing the coupleness?
You can't. One of the critiques, and even Pope Francis said at one point in an interview, we're only blessing individuals. It doesn't say that in the document.
Yeah.
And by the way, if that's the case, rewrite it then. But they never did. It says couple. Couple is a description of the status of two people who are seen together. Okay? You see, there are a couple of farmers walking down the street, In that case, the couple just means two. There's a young man and a woman, holding hands and walking on the seashore. That's a couple. We assume they're either married or looking toward marriage, or maybe, who knows, exploring, maybe they should get married. So, yeah, you cannot say we're blessing them as individuals and not their relationship, because that's not the way it works if you call them a couple. So this is all...
That's the make-believe part.
It's the make-believe part.
Pretend that words don't mean what words mean.
And the reason they do is because they, the proponents of the homosexual lifestyle they say, of course they're a couple. Homosexual activity is just a variant on matrimonial activity between a man and a woman. So as a result, but we know that shocks people, so we'll get into this pretend world. Well, you're blessing them as individuals, even though they're holding hands, and even though they got married in a civil ceremony, and even though they call themselves Mr. and Mrs., and Mr. and Mr., no, this is wrong. The real problem here, of course, is you're leading people into mortal sin and confirming them in the erroneous notion that it's not really mortal sin, because it's not even sinful, because for them it's an expression of a different form of love than what man and wife have. So it's just terrible.
Doesn't the document make all these explanations or disclaimers saying this is not a wedding, and it's like you can't dress up like you're in a wedding, and you can't do a lot of things that you're in a wedding? Doesn't that betray the fact that it's confusing with a wedding, like or a wedding blessing?
It's pretense, because of course the people who are doing it, they're saying this is our form of a wedding, or they were already married civilly, so they just want the church's approval of it. Now, when you start writing, in a document that's supposed to be guiding people about, how to act as in a Christian moral way, and you start getting into details about the nature of a celebration at which this is going to be, can't be carried out in the context of X, Y, Z. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what it is. This is silliness. To say it's not a wedding. Well, why would anyone think it was a wedding? Precisely because the people engaged in it think they're married to each other. So, the Father James Martin was pictured in the New York Times a day or two after this document came out. He brought a photographer and a reporter to two homosexuals who were holding hands, and he was giving them a blessing. Okay, that's what this is all about. Two men who think they're married, or want to be married, but certainly want to be in a sexual relation with each other, and the church is approving it.
Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it, and I appreciate that very much.